What's up, guys? My name is Richard. Today, I wanted to answer the question of how much capital do you need to retire from crypto yield farming? So I started my crypto journey with basically $0 in crypto, and eventually I've worked up to a six figures portfolio. And this is a big part of my portfolio, which is in concentrated liquidity pools. I'm earning 47% APR right now on my capital, which is earning roughly $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And I'm beating comparing to just holding my money in the market. And this dollar value just measures like the dollar value when I deposit these tokens, and then what it's worth right now. Doesn't mean that I've locked in any US dollar loss. And a better measure of progress, in my opinion, if you're using a lot of Ethereum-based pools, is to measure your profit and loss with Ethereum. You can see I'm in nice profit for most of my pools. The core positions are roughly 12.8 ETH profit right now. And here's a position that I'm still trying to turn around on my hot wallet. If I add the exited positions, then I'm still up 8 ETH on my closed positions. So up roughly 20 ETH right now from yield farming. Just a quick portfolio overview. If you implement the steps I'm showing you guys in this video, I promise you will get the best chance possible when it comes to building a portfolio for financial freedom and eventually being able to retire from crypto. So the plan is to start with a bigger picture overview, and at the end we'll go over some actionable steps you could start using today to build your portfolio. And when it comes to financial freedom and retirement, we first want to figure out our goal. So the financial freedom number is basically your annual expenses divided by the safe APR that you could withdraw every year. Then we're going to come up with a goal. So an example here is, let's say for me personally, my annual expense is roughly 30K per year. If I use a more aggressive APR of 50%, then my goal would be a $60,000 portfolio, because if I could basically withdraw 50% out of my portfolio every year, then I'm technically financially free, right? I don't have to work anymore. I could just manage my positions and I would be fully able to replace my income. But usually for the APR, we want to be more conservative. You could do like 10% to 25% when it comes to DeFi, or for traditional investment, you could use 3%. If I pull out my calculator here, if I use 30,000 for traditional investments, I'd like to use 3%, 0.03. Then I would need $1 million in stuff like a dividend stock ETF, right, to be able to pay for my expenses. But for DeFi, we could be a bit more aggressive. Let's say 30,000 divided by a 25% APR. That's a portfolio value I want to maintain, $120,000, to be able to consistently pull out $30,000 per year. And in reality, I might be earning like 50% APR on 120K, right? But I'm only withdrawing 25% of that to cover my expenses. So you want to run this with your own numbers, and you could be as aggressive and conservative as you like. But I personally recommend being more conservative. We're planning for long term here, because if you start withdrawing a lot from your portfolio when it's small, then when the market retraces, you're not going to be able to cover your expenses. So just to hammer the point home, let's say you have $50,000 worth of expenses to cover per year. You divide it by a conservative 10%, then your portfolio goal would be 500,000. That's roughly my current goal. I want to hit this first target to be really safe with my investments. And I was saying I was generating more than $3,000 per month, so it's more than enough to cover my expenses, but I'm still growing my portfolio, and I don't really want to sell all my fees just to cover my expenses, right? So that's the first step. You figure out your goal. And the second part of this is you want to make sure that your portfolio is going on the right path. So if you're investing in traditional investments, it might look something like this, right? Less volatility, and it kind of like goes up over time. But in crypto, it's more volatile, and hopefully the assets you pick and your DeFi portfolio would go up over time as well. So if you see a higher low and a higher high on your portfolio, that's a great sign that your portfolio is going down the right path. But if your portfolio looks something like this, it goes up and then it's kind of like petering out over time, and you're probably struggling and you might need to adjust your strategy a bit. And to show you guys a real example, this is Crystal. I like to look at like the earnings over time on my portfolio using Crystal, and also like the long-term trend of my portfolio. You could see last year, near September, my low was roughly $50,000, and the lowest low this year, basically roughly $75,000. And you can see my portfolio value right now is roughly 96,000. If we take 96,000 minus by the low of last year, that's $41,000 divided by 55,000, up roughly 74% compared to the low last year. So that's a great sign that my portfolio is going well. So if we measure from the low to low here, let's just say roughly 75K minus 50K, I'm up 25K, right? Divided by 50,000. That's a 50% increase from the low to low. And if we look at the Ethereum chart here, it's still trading below the price point of last year in September here. If we measure it, it's roughly 15-16%. And I'm doing decently well, right? I'm up almost a 2x from $50,000 low here on my portfolio when Ethereum was trading a little bit higher than what it is right now. So if you're in DeFi already, you could use Crystal to check if your trend is kind of like mine or if you're really struggling with your portfolio. And the next thing I want to show you guys to see like the possibility and think long term here, we could achieve a pretty great result if you stick to it and kind of compound your investments. So let's say I'm just investing for the next 10 years. I have $95,000 in my DeFi portfolio. If I contribute zero new capital, but I estimate my portfolio to like grow by 25% per year. And in reality, it might be different, right? It could be higher or lower. Like last year to this year, it's higher than 25%. But let's just say it's 25. You could see in 10 years, my DeFi portfolio would be worth almost $1 million. $884,000. And if I use that $884,000 to generate a 20% yield, that's a $177,000 worth of income per year. So that's way more than enough for me personally to kind of like live very comfortably and provide for my family. And if we extend the time horizon, right, to 20 years, you could see the number would grow to be pretty crazy, right? 8 million, 30 years, 76 million. That's why really wealthy people that have billions and billions of dollars is because they've been investing for a long time. They keep compounding their growth over time. And you guys could run your own numbers here. Just Google like compound interest calculator and you'll be able to find this. So the next thing I wanted to share is how I'm building an income machine with my DeFi portfolio. So in this diagram, there's the active income, stuff like your job, right? Trading, freelancing, or if you're launching projects, businesses, that's all active income. So investments could be stuff like stocks, bonds, real estate, and DeFi, basically any assets that are cash flowing. So in step one, when I first started out, I basically have more active income going into investments and the investment income kind of like compounding with itself. But I also have to have some active income paying for my expenses. So that's the first stage. Your investment is probably worth like $0 to like $50,000 and it's not generating a lot of money yet. So to be able to like grow, let's say like $5,000 to $1 million with only investment, if you don't put in like any active income, that's going to be very hard, right? But if you have a source of active income, then your investment income would grow much faster at this first stage. So this is the second stage. It's still the same, except that my investment is big enough to cover some of my expenses. I would still consider myself to be here because I'm still trying to grow my investments. For DeFi investors, depending on what APR you could get safely, your portfolio might be worth like 50K to 250K. Roughly at this point. And the third part where I'm close to and trying to get to eventually is there's only investment income, and I don't really need to have active income to basically pay for my expenses. So this is truly financial freedom, right? You don't need to work if you don't want to. And if you want to work, you could funnel more into your investments, but it's not necessary, right? I could technically do this, but I don't want to sell a lot of my crypto when they're cheap. I want to compound as much investment as possible. That's why I'm still working on this active income part. So I hope that makes sense, guys. If your investment covers all of your expenses and is still growing over time, you still compound some because you still want it to grow, right? But at the end of the day, that's our goal, and it's really going to unlock a lot of areas in your life. So here are like 5 action steps that have really helped me, and hopefully they help you as well. The first one is you want to know where your end goal, you want to know where you're going. If your goal is like mine, is you want to have a lot of investment income to cover your expenses, then these other steps will help. And you want to know like your financial freedom number. Number 2, you want to always make sure you're spending less than what you earn. If you spend more than you earn, then you're going to incur debt, or your investments are just going to bleed in value over time and go to zero. The third is you want to always make sure you're compounding your investment. We saw like how powerful compound investment could be, right? If I compound my investment at 25% return for 30 years, my portfolio would be worth $76 million. And even if I drop the return to 10%, that's still like 1.65 million, assuming I don't even add anything to my portfolio. Number 4 is you want to keep investing, stay consistent. This is especially important if your capital is lower. You gotta make sure like you put, whatever you can afford to put, right? $100, $500, $1,000, $2,000 per month to eventually build up that investment to be enough to cover your expenses. And the last thing I encourage everyone to do, including myself, is you want to learn like one thing about DeFi and investing every single day. If you find yield farming to be challenging, that's the first step, right? You want to learn something every day, and it could be overwhelming. Some of these concepts might be over your head, but if you keep trying, you're going to get there eventually. And if you guys want to learn more about concentrated liquidity pools and how to yield farm, how I'm able to generate a consistent return with my yield farming, do check out the other videos on my channel. It's really going to help with that part. And you can check out other YouTubers as well and learn about investing, see which one you click with the most. But I'm really trying my best to give you guys everything on yield farming and the best information possible so that you could succeed. I hope this video was helpful. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any feedback or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.